Chosen one, anchor your spirit to what I am about to say right now. That restlessness you have been carrying, the one that does not have a name yet, stop running from it. The enemy has been working overtime against you this week, for one reason and one reason only. He sees who is coming, and he knows what they are carrying. It all shifts in the next 24 hours. The waiting, the wondering, the silence that felt like abandonment. But hear this, and hear it clearly. It is not ending because time finally ran out on your patience. It is ending because of what you have done in the secret place when no one was watching. Think back to that moment this week when you almost said yes to something you knew was beneath what God had promised you. Maybe it was a conversation you walked away from. Maybe it was a door you refused to open even though part of you was desperate enough to walk through it. You did not know it in that moment. But that decision, that one act of refusal, sent a signal into the spirit realm that changed your entire trajectory. You did not disqualify yourself. You distinguished yourself. Heaven heard that moment of restraint and marked it as the turning point. You did not find this message by accident. The algorithm did not surface this for you. The Most High did. This is a divine appointment set before the foundations of the earth were laid, scheduled for this exact moment in your life, because what is coming requires you to be prepared before it arrives. Stay until the very last second of this message, because in the next few minutes I am going to show you exactly why someone powerful has turned their attention toward you. I am going to walk you through the spiritual audit that reveals how your recent warfare was not a setback, but a selection process. And at the end, I am going to release a declaration over your life that seals this new door open and locks the old season shut permanently. Do not click away. Your future self is on the other side of this message begging you to stay, because the offer that is coming does not come twice, and you need to understand its weight before it arrives. My name is Zerekiel. For years, I have been studying the hidden patterns of the spirit realm, the assignments, the activations, the divine alignments that most people misread as coincidence. And I have walked over 10,000 chosen ones through the moment when heaven selects them for something they almost talk themselves out of receiving. If this is your first time here, subscribe and hit the notification bell right now. Not because I need the numbers, but because the next message I release may be the exact transmission your spirit needs for the battle you do not see coming yet. I know what the last 72 hours have felt like. It has not been peaceful, and it has not been loud. It has been something stranger than both. A heaviness that sat on your chest even when everything around you looked fine on the surface. Maybe you were standing in the middle of a room this week, your own home, your own space, and suddenly felt like a stranger in your own life. Like the walls were the same, but something fundamental had shifted, and you could not explain it to anyone, because there are no words for it yet. Or maybe you woke up at 3 a.m. this week with an overwhelming sense of expectation. Not fear, not dread, but a feeling that something was on its way and you could not tell if you were ready for it. You feel like you have been standing at the edge of something enormous, like you are one step from a ledge you cannot see the bottom of. And the question looping in your mind has been whether what is coming is for you, or whether you somehow missed the window. And in that uncertainty, the enemy has been planting a very specific lie. Listen to your thoughts right now. He has been telling you that the reason nothing has materialized yet is because someone powerful looked at your life, considered what you had to offer, and quietly moved on. He has been replaying every mistake from the last 6 months. Every moment you were too afraid to speak. Every opportunity you hesitated on. Every relationship you watched walk away from you. And he has been using all of it as evidence for one verdict: that you are not the one. That someone more qualified, more put together, more spiritually mature was chosen instead of you. But I need you to hear what the scripture actually says about this moment. 1 Samuel 16 verse 7 says, "The Lord does not look at the things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart." Listen to what that means for you right now. The criteria being used to evaluate your readiness is not your track record. It is not your consistency. It is not the polished version of yourself that you have been trying to maintain for public view. The Most High looked past every stumble the accuser just showed you, and he looked at what is inside you, And what he found there is what caused someone powerful to begin moving in your direction. You were not overlooked. You were being observed. The heaviness you have been feeling is not the weight of rejection. It is the weight of preparation. It is what it feels like when heaven is equipping you for something your current self is not yet large enough to hold. The restlessness is not a sign that the promise has passed you by. It is the sensation of expansion happening inside you before the offer arrives outside you. You think the waiting has been punishment. You think the silence meant no. Let me reframe your reality right now. The silence was not a no. The silence was a selection process. And you have just passed it. What you just heard wasn't entertainment. It was confirmation. And if you're ready to go deeper, the Chosen One's mantle will show you exactly why God separated you before birth, why the attacks came so early, and what He's unlocking in this season, code by code, until you're walking the life He already wrote over you. The link is waiting in the first pinned comment, but not for long. Now let me take you somewhere deeper, because what I just told you about the silence being a selection process is only the beginning of what you need to understand. Most people stop there. They receive the encouragement, they feel the warmth of it, and they walk away without ever understanding the mechanics behind what just happened to them. And without the mechanics, the next wave of warfare will hit you the same way the last one did, and you will forget everything you just received. So stay with me, because this is where it gets precise. The first thing you need to understand is that the version of you who almost said yes to what was beneath you, that version of you was not weak. That version of you was being tested at the level of your next assignment. God does not test you for things you already defeated. The enemy does not mobilize resources against threats that are no longer moving. The intensity of what you just walked through is a direct proportional response to the magnitude of what you are about to receive. You do not send a battalion to stop someone who is no longer dangerous. The warfare you experienced this week was not evidence of your failure. It was a threat assessment. And the fact that you are still standing here means you passed. But here's where it goes deeper. Most people believe that passing a spiritual test means they handled everything perfectly. They think God grades on a curve of performance. But the scripture gives us a different picture entirely. Think of Gideon. When the angel of the Lord appeared to him, Gideon was hiding in a winepress, threshing wheat in secret because he was afraid. He was not standing on a mountain with his arms raised in victory. He was crouched in fear. And yet the angel's first words to him were, "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." God did not call Gideon what Gideon was. God called Gideon what Gideon was becoming. And the gap between those two things, between who you currently are and who heaven already calls you, that gap is not a disqualification. That gap is the territory of your transformation. You have been judging your readiness by your current condition. Heaven has been measuring your readiness by your destination. And this leads us to something most people miss entirely. The warfare that targeted you this week did not just test your resolve, it exposed what you were still in agreement with. Because here is the thing about spiritual attacks. They do not create weakness. They reveal it. They press against whatever is already fragile. Whatever bent under the pressure this week, whatever nearly broke, whatever lie you almost believed. That is the agreement that needed to surface. Not so God could reject you for it, but so you could see it clearly enough to finally refuse it. This is where so many chosen ones get derailed. They feel the exposure and they interpret it as condemnation. They think, if God is showing me this brokenness, it must mean I am not ready. But that is not how divine preparation works. A surgeon does not expose a wound to condemn the patient. The exposure is part of the healing. The fact that it surfaced means it is finally within reach. And what is within reach can finally be released. Coming up, I am going to show you the hidden pattern beneath your delay. The pattern that has been repeating across different seasons, different relationships, different circumstances. Wearing different faces, but carrying the same root. And once you see it, you will never be trapped inside it again. But first, this has to land, because until you understand how identity and agreement work together, the revelation coming next will not have the ground it needs to take root in you. You have been carrying a name that was given to you by someone who could not afford to see your greatness. Maybe it was a parent who saw your sensitivity and called it weakness. Maybe it was a leader who saw your discernment and called it rebellion. Maybe it was a relationship that saw your depth and called it too much. And you took that name, not because you believed it entirely, but because the person who gave it to you had enough authority in your world that their perception of you began to compete with heaven's declaration over you. And over time, without realizing it, you started performing for their version of you rather than stepping into God's version. This is the agreement I need you to break right now, not tomorrow. Right now, in this moment, as these words are landing. The name they gave you was never your name. It was their limitation dressed in the language of definition. And you were never supposed to carry it this far. Think of how Joseph's brothers stripped him of his coat of many colors. That coat was not just fabric. It was his father's declaration of favor over his life. And they stripped it from him because people who are assigned to carry lesser things cannot tolerate being near someone who carries more. Joseph had to learn in the pit, in the prison, and in the palace that no human being had the authority to strip what God had placed on him. They could take the coat. They could not take the calling. They could remove him from the room. They could not remove him from the plan. What was taken from you was never your identity. Your identity cannot be stripped. It can only be delayed. And the delay is ending now. But here is where it goes deeper still. And I need you to stay with me because this is the part most people want to skip past. The agreements you made with the names they gave you. Some of those agreements became familiar, and familiar is not the same as right. Familiar is comfortable. Familiar is known. Familiar does not require you to stretch into something that feels terrifying. And here is the uncomfortable truth. Some part of you has been protecting those old agreements. Not because they serve you, but because releasing them means you are now fully accountable to the version of yourself that heaven sees. And that level of accountability is terrifying when you have spent years convincing yourself that you are less than that. This is where the enemy's strategy becomes most sophisticated. He does not just attack your calling from the outside. He gets you to guard the cage from the inside. He gets you so comfortable with limitation, the freedom starts to feel like the threat. And so you call your smallness humility. You call your stagnation patience. You call your self-abandonment selflessness. And all the while, the life God wrote over your name sits waiting for a you who is willing to stop protecting what was never yours to protect in the first place. And what's coming next will likely surprise you. It always does. Because we have talked about what the enemy did. We have talked about the agreements you made. But we have not yet talked about the one inside you who let those agreements in. And until we face that, the cycle continues. There is a wound in you. Not a flaw, not a failure, but a wound that has been making decisions on your behalf. It is old. It goes back further than the relationship that hurt you last year. Further than the season that disappointed you. Further back than most of the stories you have been telling about yourself. It is the place where you first learned that love was conditional, that belonging required performance, that being too much of who you truly are was dangerous. And from that wound, you built a system. A careful, intelligent, emotionally sophisticated system designed to keep you safe by keeping you small. And that system has been running in the background of every decision, every relationship, every moment you almost stepped forward and then quietly stepped back. God is not angry at that system. He built you with the capacity to protect yourself. But the system that kept you safe in the season of survival will destroy you in the season of destiny. What guarded you in the wilderness will cage you in the promised land. The walls that protected you from being hurt again are the same walls keeping your blessing from reaching you. And this leads to the thing most people don't expect to hear. The breakthrough that is coming is not going to feel like relief at first. It is going to feel like loss. Because in order to step into the fullness of what God has prepared, you are going to have to grieve the version of yourself who survived by staying small. You are going to have to say goodbye to the identity you built out of your wounds. And grief, even grief for something that was limiting you, is still grief. It is still real. It still requires your honesty. But here is the divine tension in this. The grief is not the end. The grief is the door. On the other side of it is not just a new chapter. It is a new nature. A version of you that does not carry the wound as identity anymore. A version of you that does not need validation from the people who could not see you. A version of you that walks into rooms without apologizing for the atmosphere you carry. This is who heaven has been preparing. This is who the enemy has been working overtime to prevent from arriving. And this is who you are becoming, right now, in this moment, as something ancient inside you finally stops fighting its own freedom. Stay with me, because there is one more layer, and this is the layer that breaks the entire cycle permanently. The most dangerous thing about the life God wrote over your name is not that the enemy opposes it. The most dangerous thing is that it requires you to fully receive it. And receiving, true receiving, without minimizing it, without deflecting it, without immediately trying to earn what was already freely given, is one of the hardest things a chosen one is asked to do. Because the wound taught you that good things come with hidden costs. It taught you that favor eventually turns to rejection. It taught you that when something feels too good to be true, the collapse is coming. And so you have been unconsciously sabotaging the very things heaven sent toward you, not out of a rebellion, but out of a survival mechanism that never learned to trust grace. This is the final agreement that needs to break. The agreement that says you are not safe to receive fully. The agreement that says the blessing will be taken once you stop performing for it. The agreement that says the only version of love that is real is the kind that costs you something. Heaven does not love you that way. Grace does not work that way. And the life on the other side of this moment does not require you to earn it before you are allowed to live in it. You are allowed to receive this. You are allowed to walk through the door without bracing for it to close behind you. You are allowed to be the person God said you were before you spent years trying to become good enough to qualify for the title. You already qualified. The qualification happened before you arrived. The coat was already woven before you were born. And no one, no moment of failure, no season of delay, no voice from your past had the authority to change what was already written. So tonight, before you sleep, place your hand over your heart and speak this out loud. Do not rush through it. Let every word land. I release the name they gave me that was never mine to carry. I break every agreement I made with limitation, with smallness, with the lie that I had been overlooked. I release the wound that made decisions for me. I release the system I built to stay safe, when staying safe was keeping me small. I receive, fully and without deflection, what heaven has already written over my life. I receive the favor I did not earn and cannot lose. I receive the identity that was given before I was formed. I declare that the season of waiting is not ending because I finally became enough. It is ending because I always was. I step into the fullness of what was prepared for me before the foundations of the earth were laid. The door that was meant for me is open. The season that was meant for me has arrived. And I walk through it now without apology, without bracing, without looking back. I am seen. I am chosen. I am ready, and what God wrote over my name, I will live it fully, starting now.